Welcome to ETMA Tech Talk, the podcast that unveils forces shaping the future of tech. In each episode, we bring together visionary leaders, forward-thinking innovators, and game-changing experts who are transforming the enterprise tech landscape. Listen to insider perspectives, dive into bold stories of digital transformation and strategic breakthroughs. Here is your host, ETMA's Managing Director, Joe Basili.
T-Mobile is driving enterprise transformation. In this podcast, we'll explore how T-Mobile is reinventing channel sales for the B2B space with flexible programs, co-selling agility, and a renewed focus on customer experience. In this episode of ETMA Tech Talk, you'll get an insider's view on 5G maturity, massive IoT expansion, and AI-integrated mobility solutions. We'll learn how T-Mobile is enabling partners to go upmarket in cloud, IoT, and AI-powered mobility. I'm delighted that we're joined today by Paul Spencer, Channel Chief at T-Mobile for Business. With over 2 decades of leadership in wireless mobility and indirect sales, Paul's background spans everything from building national strategies to architecting complex enterprise programs and empowering partners to win in a rapidly changing tech landscape. Here's your backstage pass to one of the most influential channel minds in wireless. Welcome, Paul Spencer.
Thanks, Joe. I think of myself as a young person, but when you say that background, I realize how old I am. I don't feel like decades will do that to you, I guess.
It's true. Let's talk a little bit about your focus areas these days.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of a pretty interesting year that's going very well for us. We made a pretty significant shift. We really started the planning of it about a year ago. And I started talking to partners about it almost 2 years ago, which was, hey, we have a model that's a little bit different than our competitors in that we do bidirectional business with them, where obviously the holy grail for the channel is bring incremental business to any company. That's what every channel chief wants to go do. Our model is really heavy on supporting our direct teams as they go to market. If you look at the competitive landscape, though, my 2 competitors have much larger market share, in particular as you go up market into enterprise, what we would call strategic or global MNC type of accounts. Because of that, we made a strategic decision about 3 years ago. George Fisher, who was our SVP, George and I made a decision to say, let's go really support the direct team. Let's go build around them an ecosystem of partners that can support their ability to go land these deals. Because as much as a carrier would love to say, like, we're a $300 billion company, we're the #1 telco on the planet, God, we got gaps everywhere. And I don't think we're afraid to admit that we have gaps everywhere. You need partners to help go solve those gaps. So we're really aggressive for the last couple of years and filling in these gaps. Well, last year, literally about this time, we started to think through and plan through, okay, we've covered most of these gaps. Like, I think we got this part down. Now we really need to go lean into the channel to say, we want you really to bring your best customers to us, which invokes a lot of trust from a partnership perspective. Things in channel you need to continue to deliver on is trust back to partners. And so what we did is we said, we're going to throw some more money on the partner generated side. We're going to decelerate a little bit for us, what we would call partner teaming on our side. And we kicked that off in February. The second piece of the transition, there's really 3, but the second piece of the transition was we weren't really supporting the field, meaning partners. I had a couple people on my team, like, let's just call it, I can count on left or right hand individually, how many were supporting partners. And when I was asked, hey, what do you really need to go throw gas on this? I said, I need to pivot my whole team. And not only that, I want to add another 20 people to the group that is supporting that. I still need the same back office. I still need the same people calling on all of the primary agents, the Telarises and Hyperions and TD Cynics of the world. I still need people supporting them, but we got to go get shoulder to shoulder with partners in the field. And we've got to go explain to them why they should bring their best customers to us, because we're introducing risk every time you have that conversation with a partner. And so I literally was just on an interview, which if we fulfill that, we'll have 1 open position left on the team out of 48 roles that we pivoted towards the channel. So we went from 4 or 5 people facing the channel to 48 on my sales team side of things. So we're pretty committed to that. Now, the underlying thing is the results of that have been our partner generated business has more than doubled. well over half of our business is now coming in from partners. It's been a really quick turn. And we just announced, yesterday. Geez, time flies. We literally just announced yesterday a partnership with Crossbeam, which Crossbeam is a great data lake to be able to go share information across each other electronically, which we're a little challenged with. So we just announced a partnership with Crossbeam where we throw a bunch more money at the channel, like 2 times what I've been paying on partner generated for them to bring even more business to us. So we kind of like leaned our shoulder in a little bit and we're like, oh, we like that. And so now we just said, let's just jump all in on the deep end of the pool. And so if you're listening to this, if you're a partner, you can reach out to any of us and we'll be happy to talk to you about it. But that's been the big transformation. And here's the thing. I won't quite get there, Joe, by the end of the quarter, which is in 7 days, but I've almost equaled my 2024 sales already this year with these just 2 quick changes in our business. So we've grown significantly in the first 6 months of this year. And I feel like my field team is just getting their legs underneath them. And then we're introducing some digital capabilities, Crossbeam being the first. There's a lot more technology stack that's coming to partners over the next 12 to 18 months. But we feel like we've got the momentum going in the right way. Now, the key to all of this is how do we not go screw up the ecosystem that we built too, which we're super, super cognizant of. And so we've got some folks on our team that are going to manage and continue to work on that part of our business. But it's really the push into how do we get partners to bring business back to us. That's really the goal of any channel, I think. And that's really where we're trying to go right now and will be in the future.
That's really exciting. And that new business that you're getting, are you also going up market? Because you mentioned before you weren't really in the larger enterprises.
Yeah. So interesting stat. This is probably just Q2 and somebody's going to hit me over the head with this internally, like the next meeting I see them at. But in Q2 alone, now there's a big deal that's waiting us, by the way, because enterprise, you can kind of like, if you land a really big sale, everybody loves to talk about the number this year until Q2 next year when you need to hop over your year-over-year number. And you're like, but I don't want to talk about that deal anymore. That was just an outlier. But now we want to take credit for it. So this will be our best quarter ever in enterprise, almost double what we've ever done. 91% of that business in enterprise is partner generated.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the big deal,
you're not sandbagging it either.
No, the big deals that we're getting are definitely coming from the channel in enterprise.
So you started talking a little bit about how T-Mobile had gaps in its portfolio and its approach. Let's talk a little bit about gaps that you help partners fill.
So it's funny. I'll leave the name out of it because their CEO would call me and yell at me once they heard this. But it's your traditional $200, $300, $400, $500 million VAR. They're great at what they do. They're selling, I'll just call it dummy hardware is not the right way because they'll get mad. But like they're selling hardware every day. They're selling routers. They're selling circuits, switches. They're selling tons of laptops that are going out the door. They're shipping out tablets all of the time. None of these are connected. None of them are connected.
What?
And
they're
what
not connected.
They're not connected. So really the model, like if you think about it, if you're a VAR and you're listening to this, the model has been forever. Let me just sell the hardware and the carrier will sell the connectivity side of things. And that certainly is a model. But I will tell you from my perspective, I've got less than a 20% share in the B2B space. So in other words, clearly by mathematically, my competitors have more share. They're more in a conserve and protect side of things. And I'm in much more of a let's go grow as fast as we can and take as much share. So where like by way of example, I have one, and I'll call it kind of, because I did a deal earlier this year with a partner, one locked account. And the only reason it is locked is because we did a huge marketing deal that if you've flown on, this was the first of the airlines, they all now have it. But if you'd flown on this major airline that, I won't say where they're based, but this major airline, you can punch in your phone number and you get free service from T-Mobile on the airline. So we did this like, $20 million marketing agreement to get the deal. So I just didn't have any margin to go pay a partner on the deal. Partner won the hardware side. They're the managed service provider of it, and it worked out. So it all worked out in the end. But I've also done a deal with a different partner on that same account. So I only have one locked account, which is way different than my competitors where they have segments of the business. They have thousands and thousands of accounts that are locked. And so from our perspective, we're open for business for any partner that wants to come and work with us on a deal. Register a deal. If we give you back a partner teaming ID, which is our receipt back to you, then you know you're clear to work on the deal, and we introduce you to our direct team and you guys start working it together now. And so from that aspect, I think we're very open for business in that perspective. So when I go talk to partners about what's in it for you guys, a lot of dollars. I increased my partner generated commission budget by $40 million this year. I also understand from a partner's perspective. Like if I'm this VAR and I'm selling, a bunch of Cisco routers, I'm selling Aruba networks and everything, and I'm selling a lot of Lenovo laptops, HP, stuff like that. I get that we introduce some risk into that, but their whole business model, because I've been in so many of their warehouses, which are like amazing, crazy places to go see. I've been in so many of these warehouses where they're already putting everything together. Like my favorite was I was at this partner, Joe, and they walked me through, they were selling this tech stack, if you will, of hardware to a national retailer that had 1,800 plus stores. And they were walking me through all these intricacies of this little circuit goes here and this here, and they sell it in this cage and they ship it. Usually they have this whole assembly line set up, and I go, cool, where are you introducing connectivity in this? And they looked at me like, we never thought of that. And I go, why not? You're like literally dotting every T and crossing every I for this customer. But I said, by the way, if you would have just added connectivity, I would have wrote you a check for $750,000 and I would have given you residual for the next 4 years on the deal. And they were, wait a minute, what? Hold on, that's a lot. So I see partners, in particular VARs, especially as you go further up market, because it's more customized solutions and enterprises will pay for that versus mid-market, not as much. SMB doesn't necessarily. But, when you get into enterprise strategic, certain segments of the government, man, they're already paying you to do this work. You guys are already doing it. It's literally just hold on, let's ask another couple of questions here. We'll come in and help sell that complexity of the deal for you. You just put it into your assembly line of what you're already doing for the customer. And I would think from a customer perspective, you're solving another problem for them and you become more valuable anytime you solve problems for any customer or person or employee. Like anytime you solve problems, you get more valuable.
Yeah, the hallmark, as I said at the opening, was this idea of flexible programs from T-Mobile. And boy, you're really speaking volumes to that right now.
Yeah, we're trying.
So can you talk about some innovative projects that you've done for clients? Some things that were maybe out of the box?
Yeah. So there's a number of them. And let me almost back up and I'll tell you a really interesting story. This will probably apply to maybe 15 to 20% of your listeners to this, but the whole segment will get it. But there may be like 15 to 20% that play in this. So in wireless for 20 plus years, I know enough to be dangerous. I usually not stupid enough to get myself into trouble. I do sometimes from a tech perspective. Like I'll say some things that maybe I'm like, I heard a smart sales engineer say this, and so I'm gonna use it. I like to steal the people's information legally and like say this is what we should do. But I was at one of the big partner shows. This is, I think, 3 years ago. And there was a partner had carved off like a private dinner, and we invited 5 VARs to the dinner. And the guy who curated the event was great at this stuff. And he's like, hey, I need you to sit next to this guy. Well, his nickname is Mike. I won't say his last name, but I need you to sit next to Mike. I think you'd find the conversation interesting. Okay, cool. So I sit next to Mike, and Mike starts talking through. I just kind of said, hey, Mike, Bill there said we should probably sit next to each other. So I'm guessing you're working on something that's interesting. What are you working on? And he said, we're big into healthcare, and we're in the middle of this huge Wi-Fi upgrade for Boston Children's Hospital. And I said, okay, tell me about it. And he said, well, it's 3 million square feet across 30 campuses that we're trying to go solve for. But it's a pretty challenging thing, but we've been their MSP for the past 10 years. I know the CIO super well. And so, we're going to end up doing the deal and they'll upgrade everything. And I said, great, what's causing the transition? Are they just going to Wi-Fi 6 or what are they doing? They said, yeah, they want to go to Wi-Fi 6, but the real reason is there's 2. They were the #1 rated children's hospital from a tech perspective for the last 9 years, but they lost that mantle last year. And then they also lost a patient because they couldn't get a hold of a doctor who was in their hospital. The Wi-Fi signal didn't propagate to where he was. It's a children's hospital. So they lost a child because the doctor who could get the patient coded and the doctor who knew what to do was in a part of the hospital where it just didn't get signal.
No signal.
And so I said, okay, hey, if you guys, now we were coming up on F1. I hadn't gone to the F1 event in Vegas yet, but we had started to talk a ton about private networks here at T-Mobile and what it would look like from a private network perspective. And so I'd sat in enough meetings to kind of know a little bit of what the technology is. And I knew that we were draping a private network over the city of Las Vegas to run an F1 Formula race. Number one, to run an F1 race typically is circuits and switches and cables. And so they would bring in truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of cable.
Right.
You don't have to do that in wireless. So that's one big. So I thought the same thing in my sales brain. I was like, well, I go, Mike, have you guys ever talked about like private networks? And he said, no. You mean like, I can't think of what's the public one at the moment. But they had looked at some different public private networks that are not really private. They're public airways, but you can ring fence in the signal and make a private. And they like, we've sold a couple of those in. They haven't gone well for us. So no, why? And I said, well, we have our own network slice that we could slice off of our network, develop a private network. I said, I'm not the guy to talk to. You need to talk to this guy, Mike Fitz at T-Mobile. And Mike's our VP of Advanced Network Solutions. He's been around for a long time, channel guy too. I think Mike's on like year 29. He was at Sprint first in T-Mobile. So I said, I think you should talk to Mike. So after that, I called Mike and introduced the Mike and Mikes. About 12 months later, what was a Wi-Fi 6 upgrade turned into, I would probably call it our signature at the time, our signature private network deal that we did. And so we now cover all 3 million square miles across 30 different campuses. It's integrated into their ERP system as such as this. We can literally fine tune the network for the customer's needs. So by that, I mean this. If you're a nurse and as soon as you walk into the building, it notifies the network and you get prioritization inside of the network. Prioritization is key because it controls traffic. Now, let's say you go home though, but you're on call. We actually can prioritize you being on a call ahead of our public traffic because now you're out on the public network, but we can identify you through our network. We have a pretty smart network. Our engineers are pretty darn smart. That says if there's a traffic jam outside of your house, but you get called to be on call, you'll actually get that call because you're at the top of the stack from the network perspective. So we can literally fine tune the network for a customer's needs to be able to then go back and solve the problems. There's been another 78 hospitals that this customer, or this partner has brought forward as deals because they're kind of considered like the healthcare expert after this. Heather Nelson, who's the CIO of Boston Children's Hospital, has been like a huge spokesperson for us. She's been on the Wall Street Journal, like every other trade rag out there talking about this is their solution that they did. And so that's the technology solution part of things. That's great. I'll also tell you, I wrote a very, very healthy 7-figure check to the partner for this deal. So if I'm a partner and I'm listening and I'm kind of playing in private networks in any way, shape, or form, they're profitable for you guys and they solve problems for the customer at the end of the day. And so that is like, I think that's pretty disruptive for us. We're the only carrier because of our network and where we sit from a network tech stack perspective that can actually offer this nationwide. My competitors can offer it in a pocket here or there. We can do this anywhere. And so we partnered with Major League Baseball, the PGA, F1, like different like major. This is not like a beta or test. And will this work? Will this not work? It's a real thing that we have customers coming on to the network every single day. One of my peers who sits on the other side of the office in Chicago here with me, Mo Baidu, runs that whole program for us. Mo could sit down and I could pay attention for about 4 minutes until I lose track of what he's saying because he's super smart and he's way up here. But yeah, we can go solve a lot of problems for partners and for customers.
Private networks are huge for our members. I mean, ETMA members have been all over it for like 2 years. They've been talking about it and how they're gaining market through that offering and solving a lot of client problems. But the problem that you described,
this is actually, I would argue, a true private network. It's not a public macro space that you're using. It's your own network slicing. It's your own network slice that we peel off of our network to say, here you go. Here's a fun story for you about F1. So I had an opportunity to go to F1. This was not last year, but the year before. And the most interesting thing for me was not the race, because cars go by at 200 miles an hour. And so I was like, okay, I got it. great event, like super great event. But what was interesting to me is that Saturday we held a thing where obviously I had a couple partners with me. We had like 30 customers. And so you got to do the corporate thing like, hey, we got to prove out your value here if you're going to bring all these people to a trip like this. The meeting had John, our chief strategy officer and architect of the network. And it was the commissioner of Las Vegas, tech commissioner of Major League Baseball, and the same for PGA. I'm a huge sports guy. So I was like sports and technology mixed. And I was like, this is great. Like I got there early. I'm like, there's 2 other people sitting down, it's not that big of a room. There's 50 seats, but I'm just like, I'm ready to go. And what was interesting was, so we accounted for a certain amount of point of sale slices, if you will, which now previously that have been switches. If you were trying to cover an event like that, you'd had to run cable, you'd had circuits, everything that's going on. That's how you would have had to have covered it. So the Vegas event was way bigger than what the city actually thought that year. That was the first year of the event. And so they underestimated. So this is them telling the story on stage. These are not my words, but the city commissioner calls John Saw, technology guy, and says, hey, John, we made a mistake. We need like 50 more circuits by tonight. Now, normally, think about this. How much cable would you have to, where are you getting the cable? Where is that coming? Like, where's all that stuff coming from? John goes, hold on. I'll call you back in 5 minutes. He calls him back in 5 minutes. He goes, you're set.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's card up more than
how
I don't know
that
how this
cable
works.
Yeah. Especially in a town like Vegas that never sleeps. Wow.
Yeah.
Some story.
Yeah.
Always fun when you can mix your favorite hobbies and interests with business and get synergy from there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Very cool. I think I saw it I'm trying to think when I was there in December, they were breaking it down still. And that was in your piece of it. It was, the equipment for the cars and everything. So
I've learned to almost kind of plan it around not being there within about a 45, 60-day window up to that race. It hasn't worked out so well because it seems like every year I'm there 2 weeks before the race. And it's like trying to get your Uber to take you around town is a little difficult. Everything's just slower because they're all trying to figure out how to get around all the construction.
Detours. Sure. We were walking around and we were facing those detours that you're talking about. It was a pain around where Hell's Kitchen was. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Do your partners ever try to one-up you with some uncarrier moves? What's the wildest pitch you've seen from a partner or something like that?
That's a good question. What's the wildest thing a partner has tried? I don't know, Joe. I think when John Ledger came in way back almost darn near 15 years ago, he was the quintessential break glass in case of emergency. I think John was the like we were, after the failed Sprint acquisition, we were, we got some money, otherwise we were in trouble. And he broke all the rules. And so
he sure did.
I think partners come in wanting to be a part of that a lot of times. And maybe that's not inaccurate, but I think they're coming in trying to be a part of it rather than like, hey, we want to go break glass. I think they come up with a lot of great ideas of like, hey, we were thinking of doing this. We're thinking of doing that. Would you guys support this? Would you support that? And those are great conversations to go have, because I think our attitude has always been, I try not to say no. I try to say, let's go see if we can figure it out. Let me go figure it out. Because sometimes there's a tech solution that needs to be implemented. Sometimes there's, I need some API integration to be able to make this happen into SAP or something different to be able to kind of ease this for the partner. I try to say no on things, but let's go figure out if we can go do it. And if we can, just like everything else, what's the return on capital to be able to make it happen? And if it makes sense, then cool. I've got a business case I can go sell internally, and we try to go make it work.
All about the business cases. So speaking about breaking things, how's AI impacting things in your world?
It's interesting. Mike Sievert's our CEO, for those who are listening that don't know. And he has been beating the drum for a couple of years of like, we're going to be an AI first, data-driven company. It's a cool calling card, in all honesty. Like, that sounds great, but like, what does it actually mean? We brought in this guy, Jeff Woods. He's got a book called The AI Driven Leader. So if you're listening and you just sort of like, I don't really know where to go read the stinking book. This was his opening line, Joe. He goes, if you're using AI as like Google Plus, you're using it wrong. And I was like, oh, guilty as charged. That's so me. I'm like, this thing seems to get to the answer quicker without me having to search through Google. So that's how I was using it. And he teaches a framework and a context about how you actually go use AI to solve business problems. He basically has an AI board that is Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Abe Lincoln, Napoleon. Like, you can make up anything, and this is the board. And so he'll work with AI to, I want to go into this market. I want to go try to solve this problem, or here's this business plan. It spits it to them and says, what would you think? Like, what would they think? He walked us through a couple of enterprise use cases that was like, it wasn't Whole Foods, but let's just say you're selling to the CEO of Whole Foods. Here is our pitch, feeds it downloads the personality of the CEO, then here's the pitch. And so then it comes back and says, I would say this differently. I wouldn't have this graphic on there. He's really big on this piece. So you don't have this on your deck. Like, it blew me away. And I've poked around with AI quite a bit the last couple of years. I was on a podcast. They said, what's the number one thing for a channel chief? This was 2 years ago. And I said, if you're not figuring out AI, you're behind. And I said that knowing I was behind when I said it too, Joe. And so maybe it was to try to hold myself accountable. But that was the first thing that I saw that I was like, okay, this is really teaching me. It's a little bit around, here's the prompts you have to use. Man, it's pretty tactical and meaty and how you get into it. But yeah, Jeff Woods would be a good guy to go if you're looking for like a book, which I know sounds weird, because you could actually just take the book and feed it to AI and it could spit you back out all of Jeff's prints. Like, he even said that. He was like, you don't really need my book.
Or you could just ask AI, how could I do this better? I've done that with AI where I have prompts laid out. And I said, before you give me the answer, is there a better way to structure this prompt to get a better response from you? Here's the audience. Here's the outcome that I want. Ask me any questions before you give me the response. And it's mind-blowing.
I will tell you, from an AI perspective relative to T-Mobile, I'll say a little bit here to get dangerous. What I will tell you is the way that our network was architected, it was architected with a security posture. Now, 3 years ago, not my words, George Fisher, my boss's words, were we were in the breach of the month club, which is never what you want to. You don't want to be in the breach of the month club. It was not, and that was about it too. I constantly remember being pulled into meetings that was like, you get a notice from legal that was like, you have to try, they would walk us through what the breach is. I have to call partners to say, hey, this customer is, we did a deal with this customer together. So it wasn't a fun thing to do. Siebert made a great move, hired a guy named Jeff Simon, who came in as our CISO, just promoted him to CIO or CTO, I think, like last month. And Jeff came in and really hardened our network. And hardened our network from a security posture standpoint, built in a lot of AI and algorithmic warning signals, if you will. And so I'll give you a great example of, we have the ability to detect if somebody is trying to hack our network, create a sinkhole, which sort of acts as still our network, but not, and allows us to then monitor what's that bad actor trying to do, and then figure out and learn from it while they're still thinking they're breaching us, if you will. And, knock on wood, since Jeff has come in now almost 3 years ago, we have not had a breach, and that has not been the case for the industry. And so that is a big thing of how we've used AI, is really, when you think about all of the data that traverses a wireless network on a minute by minute perspective, it makes the three of us networks super huge targets, just as big as any fintech industry, healthcare, anything. Like, it's crazy how big of targets that wireless carriers are in that perspective. And I think that's one of the things that goes unsaid. And as you get into B2B, like, one of the interesting things, my career kind of growing up in the industry was an enterprise and an SMB, basically everything with government. And if you look at below 100 customers, particularly in the micro segment below 25, we have like almost a 50% share in that space. So what's really interesting, if I go back to, again, the Ledger comment, when Ledger came in, what the main thing they did is really worked on brand. And so you had to market your way there. And where we got really good at was consumer. And we went from a net promoter score perspective, kind of a lower than average company. Like, people knew who we were, but didn't have a great reputation, to a couple of years later, we're like infinity brand, like Harley Davidson and Apple and like all these huge companies that you aspire to be. That was now T-Mobile on the consumer perspective. And so there's some drag or halo effect that would happen in micro, because most micro customers go to a retail store to be able to go get connectivity. You get outside of that, you get pegged as a retail store. And so what was interesting, especially when I was in enterprise, if I would call customers or you get into a meeting, try to get a meeting, and they'd say like, hey, my name's Paul Spencer from T-Mobile. Here's what I'm calling you about. And they're like, T-Mobile. I'm like, no, my daughter's got a phone. I'm good. Thanks, man. Our brand was so big. And so on consumer, when you looked at B2B, we literally, Joe, we're getting closer. We literally lagged like 30 points behind our competitors in B2B. Like we were off the map, not even relevant. And so when you look at a hard network that we put together over the last couple of years, the tech stack that we have, private networks, all of these different things, we very much have a B2B grade network and well beyond that, but it's still a little known fact, if you will. And so the halo of that takes a second, I think, is honestly within the channel, because VARs, MSPs, SIs, they all have fantastic, deep relationships with enterprise and strategic customers. But we haven't transacted a ton with them, if you will. We're doing more and more deals with them every single quarter. But that's what when I look at like the next 24 to 36 months, I think that's what's super, super interesting is the more that I go work with the bigger VARs. You take like this Boston Children's Hospital, you do one deal like that, and all of a sudden a partner who's got 200 plus healthcare systems in their Rolodex that they do business with goes, let me bring you another 78 that I think all fit this bill for now. And I'll bring you the rest. We're in the middle of a tech cycle with them that they won't be buying for another 3 years because I sold them whatever we're 2 years ago type of deal. So it presents a really interesting business opportunity for the channel as a whole. And I think is interesting from a network perspective of what's important that you're selling to a customer at the end of the day. And if having a network with a security posture, I would call it first at this point, is important, we should probably have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that evolution with T-Mobile when I think about it, because we've had guests from T-Mobile speak to the organization maybe 10, 15 years ago and where you're at today. And certainly with evangelists like you, the secret's no longer a secret. So it's really exciting to see how T-Mobile has evolved. As you said, it started with the branding and then behind it, building out the network and everything.
Yeah.
And now the channel. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Let's get to know you a little bit. Were there any early life experiences or people that set you on the path that maybe resemble what you do today?
So here's how I got into wireless. I went to a small Division III school in Minnesota, and I played football and baseball in college. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, 2-sport athlete in college. I remember I graduated. I was engaged. That's my wife that we're 24 years in August now. But I had no money. I'm graduating and I needed a job. And so somebody else on the baseball team got a job at Wells Fargo. I had a degree in business sports management. And so I was like, okay, I'll go get a job because I need a job. Well, Joe, 30 days into working in a bank, I'm like, 4 walls are like claustrophobia of immense proportions. I'm like, I shouldn't do this. This is bad. And about 6 months later, my catcher from my baseball team walked into the bank just randomly. And I'm literally a banker, not a teller, but a banker. And so I was like, hey, Josh. And he's like, hey, he goes, by the way, he goes, do you like what you're doing? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is killing me. No, I hate it. He goes, well, hey, I work for this company called VoiceStream, and we need a rep for Circuit City. Hey, would you be interested? Now, when you're, 6 months out of college and your job's like, I was making 24 grand a year at that time, right? So I was like, what does the job pay? He's like, I don't know, like 35 grand. You're like, I've won the lottery. Like I could make 11. I'm never going to need to make any more money than this in my entire life. I'll be set for life is where your head goes. So I go and interview for the job and I get the job. And so T-Mobile had just bought VoiceStream, but it was still VoiceStream. Like I physically remember the collateral. And so my first job in wireless was going out into stores, Circuit City stores, to convince them to sell T-Mobile. And then it was the Monday after Black Friday. So super busy day, obviously. And I get into the office. Now, Josh, my buddy, was notorious for not ever being early. And I'm kind of an early morning person. So it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I come in and his bag's there. And I'm like, what is going on? And then there was one other rep. There's three of us in the market in Minneapolis. The other rep comes in and she's like, what is Josh doing here? I said, I don't know. I think he's getting fired. It's just my guess. Sure enough. I have no idea what the guy did. I don't know what happened, but probably looked good. So at the time, in national retail, Best Buy in Minneapolis, because that's where they're based, was our biggest account. And so they literally let Josh go and they call me in the office, Joe. And I am like, am I next? Like, am I getting
Right.
did something happen? Did I don't know. So I walk in there and they're like, hey, you're gonna run Best Buy. And I was like, oh, okay. I've been here for 34 days, I think. Sure, why not give me the biggest account that we have? And not like in Minneapolis, but like nationally, that's like the big one. And it fit me like a glove. And I had like 20 part-time people, college people. Again, I'm not even a year out of college, so I associated really closely with them. But I was married. My wife and I just got married, so I was probably a little there was some space there, if you will. And I remember that first month we were, biggest quote in the country, and I think we did like 211% to our number. Well, I quickly got on the radar of a lot of people, and I had a boss at the time, Mike Sousa. So Mike, if you're listening, good to see you. Mike and I ran into each other at a hotel bar last year. We closed down the bar. It was fantastic. It was a great night. Mike's one of the best bosses I've ever had. And the January went really well. And he came and saw me and said, hey, look, you've got a huge career here. I never thought of myself as being a corporate guy or anything. I thought I was going to be like a college baseball coach or football coach or something. And Mike was the first guy that really believed in me. And he promoted me several times. From there, I went to run Wisconsin. Then I came back to run Minnesota. And then he moved my wife and I down to Atlanta. And then I ran a region. And then I went behind the scenes and ran accounts like Walmart and everything but Costco, basically, and every national retailer that's out there. And it was really honestly, it's Mike's sort of leaning into me at that early stage of my career and saying you've got the stuff for this. And to me, that was like a coach. It was like a coach saying you can do this. You can be a really big player here. And that was hugely important a long time ago. I had a lot of good bosses, bad bosses since then, but Mike was the first one to invest in me.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self?
Boy, not everything's as big of a deal as you think it is, dude. Just relax.
Wow.
I tend to be fairly intense. I've had two sort of stages of my career. One where I was, again, played college football, but very Vince Lombardi. Very, you're going to do it my way. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to practice it 100 times and you're going to get it right. I took over a big piece of business for us and I was like, I'm going to show you how to do the job. I'm going to teach you how to do the job. And then I'm going to hold you accountable how to do the job. If you don't like it, you need to find a different job. That was my opening speech, Joe.
Wow.
Terrible. It kind of worked. It was super painful, but it works. And then I had a couple other bosses that were much different and showed me a different kind of management philosophy, if you will. It was much more my personality too, which is, look, I need to teach everybody how to go do a job. And you need to have the skills, you need to have the tools. And if you don't, then I'm responsible for getting that for you. But at the end of the day, you're a responsible adult and it's your job to go deliver on expectations. And if you're not delivering on expectations, then that's a different conversation of either I'm not communicating effectively with you and I need to figure that out, or maybe what I say isn't getting through or I haven't said it enough times, or it's a bad strategy on my part. But I really, this is just sort of like my own tangent of a big extreme ownership. Jocko Willink, for people who follow Jocko, former Navy SEAL commander,
Sure.
really charted with turning around the Battle of Fallujah and the Iraqi war. And it's obviously made a big brand for himself, but reading through his stuff was super helpful because from a leadership perspective, you realize that people on your team aren't doing what you want them to do. It's your fault. And that can be a little bit eye-opening when you come from a really Vince Lombardi based mindset of you're going to do what I say. And then the other side of the coin is nobody has to do it. So I think that's kind of helped me with partners, to be honest, because I never come in with a partner that's you have to do what we ask you to do. look, here's our program, here's our rules. I'm definitely going to listen to you, but it's up to you if you want to work with us. I can't make you. I'd love it if you would, but there's nothing I can do that can make you. And we're all human beings here at T-Mobile. We make mistakes and we'll try to figure it out if we do and correct them. But, can't make you be my friend, Joe. So
that's some great advice. So let's flip it around. Let's say we could take your younger self, bring them forward into the future, and they could listen to this podcast. What do you think would surprise them the most about where your career path ended up and where you are today?
Joe, I never would have thought or dreamed that I would have made it this far in a career. Like, I just never really saw myself as that. I never thought that this was going to be like, and the funny part is I go back to college, growing up in Minneapolis in the 90s, Best Buy is kind of coming around a little bit. That's where they started. That's where they're based. And so after school and sometimes in college, we'd go to Best Buy just to like go play the video games that were like, you go to Best Buy 10 times a month just to hang out. And so I always thought, man, if I ever had this job where like I could be around electronics, because I love business, but I really love sports. So I always thought I was going to either be an athletic director or a coach, but that would be the other thing I would maybe want to go do. I never would have guessed I could have actually made a career out of being in technology. When I joined T-Mobile, we had 6 million customers. We were the 6th carrier out of 6. We kind of almost went out of business twice. I never thought we'd be the largest telecommunications company on the planet. To be a part of the ride this whole time in one way, shape, or another has been really incredible.
And who would have thought that telecom would be so much at the forefront of technology?
I remember one of my first sales jobs in retail was at Circuit City in Minneapolis. France Avenue 494, if anybody's listening, there used to be a Circuit City, obviously no longer there. My job was working in cordless phones, home phones, cell phones, CD players, like all of these little things that you would sell. And obviously at Circuit City back then, you worked on a base plus commission. And I have no idea, like you were selling, 30 minutes for $45 plans. There's a company called Aerial Communications that came out with per second billing that was like revolutionary kind of thing. I always led the store in cell phone sales. I have no idea why. It just was easy and it just came. I could just talk to people about it. I could sell them, you're selling brand new technology, which is like a really interesting place. It's always an interesting intersection to sell brand new tech, but nobody really knows what it is. But yeah, to your point, nobody thought, Ben, that you were going to be able to carry around your computer in your pocket and video call and all the crazy things that we can do now on a phone. That was 1996, I think, when I worked there. Like, no, you definitely never would have thought you would have made it to here for sure.
Well, as we start to wrap things up, let's talk a little bit about your business goals. You talked a little bit about goals for the next year, but maybe you could go into more detail and just kind of wrap it up on that point.
Yeah, it's a great question. So from like, where do we want to take the channel perspective is what I talk a ton about. We still have an insatiable desire, I would call it, to work with partners to move up market, SMB, mid-market, enterprise, government, Fed-led, the whole stack of things. We still have a deep need and strong desire to fill in our ecosystem with more partners from a partner-generated standpoint. Again, direct led. We've spent the last, call it 4.5, 5 years building out an ecosystem of partners that definitely tackle that for us. That's like the external statement, if you will. The internal statement is we're in a pretty big Salesforce project with Salesforce and working with, I won't say who our CLR is, but a really deep integration with our CLR to be able to make just doing business with us easier. And it's not only from an API integration standpoint, I'm under the mindset of this, Joe. We don't have it today. I hope that this is our future set is there's some world-class partner programs out there. And when I say world-class, I think like Cisco and Microsoft and, the biggest brands on the planet. And from us as a channel perspective, I think some of our maturation has had to have been, or the vision that I have is we need to be along the same lines. We're, again, the largest telco on the planet. We're a Fortune 30 company. We're in the same brand category as those other companies. but we haven't thought that way from a channel perspective. And so we've done a ton of work internally and have a really robust roadmap for partners as they come along and work with us. We continue to release new things like literally on a quarterly basis that improve the process of working with us. And in the interim, if there's issues that we need to go solve for, we've got a ton of human glue on my team down, going from 4 or 5 people to 48 people, to where every single partner, I have a team that I put on the field that is the day that you get your dealer code, which is your identifier with us to be able to earn commission. There's a team that I have that's, I call them a growth team. They're your white glove service. You get a call from them literally the first day. And these are, I got 7 people on this team, all sitting in the United States. And their whole job is, Joe, I'm going to call you and I'm going to talk to you about what your business plan is. What are you hoping for? Why did you sign up? And then I'm here to help you navigate all of our program. You get comfortable. I'll register your first deal with you. I'll sell your first deal because I'm a salesperson and I have a quota against this. And if we need tech support, I'll bring in tech support. Like, I'll help you in every which way. And then once you get to a certain level with us, then we migrate you out into a channel account manager that's geographically in the same area. So every partner in our program has somebody physically tied to them on my team now. And so while we continue to increase on our tech stack relative to how well we do business with partners, there is always somebody. There is literally somebody that they will have their cell phone number and email address, and they should call them and they can go talk to them, and they can help them figure out anything that they need to navigate in the program. And so as I look at the future, it's continued to grow our business that's incremental from the channel. I think we're going to continue to come out for offers like we talked about with Crossbeam at the top. Crossbeam isn't the offer. That's just the data lake that we're using, because I don't really want to go show you all of my customers because you may use that. And I'm sure you don't want to show me all of yours. And so that's where technology like Crossbeam comes into play. And it's super useful for us, but it's coming up with programs like that to go drive more and more business back to T-Mobile. And I think our hope from T-Mobile's perspective, at least mine is, and from a channel chief perspective, is you get to go sell a really great product. Like, there was a internal meeting yesterday that we kind of broadcast. It was on YouTube too, so it wasn't like internal, but we just won a bunch of awards for having the best network. It's the first time we've won that award. So you have a network or product that's recognized as the best in the industry with very straightforward security posture, and they'll pay you really well for it. It's a really interesting intersection if you're a partner, I think, at this time. We're not perfect. We've got a lot of stuff to continue to go fix, to get better at, but I think that's just the evolution of the channel and what everybody who sits in my chair is trying to go do as well. And so my hope is that partners give us a chance and we can go work with them, give our network a chance. It's something that customers continue to ask for that's out there. So continued growth and continued improvement in the partner experience, Joe, would probably be the 2 ways I would say that.
Paul, this was great. So if somebody was inspired by this podcast and they want to, maybe they don't have a partnership relationship, or they want to reach out and learn more, what's the best way to learn more?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 different ways. Every partner works with what Legacy was called master agents. We call them primary agents. So if you're a TSD, you've worked with the Telarises and AppsRex and Nirvana Stanley, Telesys. Somebody will get mad at me because I didn't say it. Like, if you're a Legacy Disty or Ingrown, Get Wireless, TD Synnex, we've got other partnerships in Hyperion and Core and Converge IoT. I've got a dozen primary partners that are out there that I've never met a partner who doesn't work with one of those. Fun story. The last couple of years, I did the keynote at Channel Partners, and I think it was just the message that we talked about. But after that, we actually had to shut our PRM off because we broke it, because so many partners tried to come on board. And then we haven't turned it back on yet. And the only way for you to get into our program right now is to go through a primary agent. So that's the way to get in. You can also look on tmobile.com/partner programs and you can get there. We actually have continued to increase the amount of partners every single quarter after we shut it off a couple of years ago, which is a testament to our brand and team and all the work that we're doing. But that's the easiest way to get to us, Joe.
Well, Hyperion and Core are both members of the association, so that's an easy one to recommend to people. Paul, this was really inspirational, educational. You're a fantastic evangelist for the T-Mobile brand as well as for the channel program. Thank you for your time. This brings us to the end of another episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it. I love the work you're doing, and hopefully I get to see you and some of your partners in the future.
ETMA Tech Talk podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes research, collective wisdom, and action. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions from the market's top problem solvers, making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.